If you're familiar with any Michael Crichton stories, then you may be familiar with what his theme always was in his novels. And it was basically science meets original sin. What he'd always write about, and I don't think he was a Catholic, but what he was always right about is what happens when you have the fundamentals of science and then they clash with humanity and the reality of the passions of the human life. And so you had such powerful stories as Andromeda Strain and Coma and, of course, Jurassic Park. As a matter of fact, the theme of Jurassic Park was stated in the very early part of the movie directed by Steven Spielberg based on the writings of Michael Crichton. And the theme was, be aware of chaos theory. As you remember, Dr. Malcolm in the movie explains that chaos theory is that you cannot fully control for all things all the time. And so that was the whole story about Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park would work great as long as nothing went wrong. But the slightest thing goes wrong and you'd have disaster. And of course, that was the theme of the movie and that was the reality of the movie. Well, when we look at that reality, we can see that if Jesus read books, Michael Crichton would probably be his favorite author. The reason why, in his own parables, there's always chaos theory. There's always something that goes wrong that's unexpected. Great example, which we actually saw this weekend here in Massachusetts. The great example is that whole story of the house built on rock and the house built on sand. In the house built on rock, Jesus says when things go wrong, it's solid. But when the house is built on sand and the big storm comes along, all of a sudden the house is lost. And that's that whole thing. Everything works fine providing nothing goes wrong. Well, in today's gospel reading, we're looking at the famous story of the Prodigal Son. And it's similar, where the Prodigal Son foolishly takes his inheritance and decides he's going to go and live it up, live the high life. And of course, he soon finds out that he can go through his money quite quickly. But then, again, chaos theory happens. There's a famine. Now, a lot of times when we think of famine, we think of the scenes of people who have no food. But in reality, a famine means that food is rare, therefore it's more expensive. The rich people spend more money for the food, the poor people have none. And so that's the reality of the famine. And so here he was, his whole life was focused on having money, and now all of a sudden he has none. And without money, then suddenly food is expensive, and if he had any, it had to be paid for what little survival he could afford at that point. Then Jesus makes a powerful twist. He has nothing else to do but to hire himself out. How does he hire himself out? He hires himself out on a pig farm. Now I want you to think about that. He's Jewish. And now he's working for someone who owns pigs. That means, A, he's not working for another Jew. He's working for a Gentile, maybe someone who needed someone to take care of his pigs, but in the same time was part of a hostile environment against the Jews. He could have been an Arab, he could have been a Roman, whatever the case may be, but it also begs the question and answers that question, well, if he was so hungry, why didn't his boss just give him food? And the answer is probably because he was Jewish working for a Gentile, and the Gentile needs somebody, but aside from that, he probably didn't care about the Jew. And so you have that great hostility that happens even to this day in the Middle East. And so here is this poor person who decided that he had the whole world in his hands because he had all this money, now has nothing. But look at what happens. He's alienated from his family, he's alienated from his community, he's alienated from his God, he's alienated from everything, and now he loses his human dignity. Now he's alienated from his very humanity. The only way he can survive is to live like a pig, like an animal that is rejected by the Jews. He's lost everything. We see that he returns to the Father, but what does that mean? The Father is the only one who can restore his dignity, his humanity, his family, etc. Only the Father. He can go nowhere else because he's lost it. He's lost every opportunity to have anything, and so he's lost it. So he returns to his Father, not really looking for anything, just a place where he can be treated a lot better than he was being treated on the pig farm. And when he does that, he discovers the full restoration of the Father. Why? And this is something the other son doesn't get, because the Father understood how lost is. And we understand that with Jesus as well. Jesus understands how lost is, how much it is to be alienated from God. It is a horrible experience that he wants no one to know. And so he always opens that door to that reality of humanness. He always opens that door of that reality of mercy and reconciliation. Those who choose not to have that door walk down the path to a loss of self that is a nightmare that no one wants to consider. And that's what Jesus tells us. We're kind of like, at times, the older son, the one who says, but I've been faithful. And the Father says, but you don't know how lost was. Yes, in all justice, I shouldn't bring him back. In all justice, I should say, you made your bed, you can lie in it. But what I'm saying to you, he says to the son, is you have to understand how lost is. You and I have a mission, a double mission, because our service of God, our presence of God, and you realize just going to church on Sunday is service to God. Our service to God and signs to others that God is alive is that door that shows those who are walking down the path to being completely lost to turn back. And those who are totally lost to turn back. I don't know about you, but I've had the experience of turn to people and say, come back, and they'll say, oh, God will never forgive me. And I have to explain, that's not true. Of course he will forgive you. So you look at that and you understand that that is our mission, to proclaim to people the route to restoration, who is only in the Father through Jesus Christ, and to proclaim to people the mercy of the Father. Because if people walk down that path and they don't understand where that path is leading them, when they find out, they'll realize how lost is. And without the hope that we have to offer them, they stay lost beyond our imagination. Let us be the signs of mercy to which we are called. God bless you.